My epic dream, yes. My epic dream is actually to create like an Afrofuturist renaissance. And so what I mean by that is I envision, like a lot of people have envisioned Afrofuturism really just through the aesthetic, through like sci-fi and technology and, spaceships and Black Panther. Um, I envision it more broadly as part learning from the past, part Sankofa, part learning from the future to create like this powerful version of our community in the present. One of the things that I'm really interested in is futures literacy, and it's this idea of learning how to use the future. It's a skill, it's a capacity like any other kind of literacy. But this one is being able to see and recognize that the way that we anticipate the future is 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 very commonplace, and it's almost like breathing where you do it, you anticipate the future all the time, right? You anticipate the future in terms of when I'm crossing the street, I anticipate whether that car is going to get to me before I make it across the street or not, right? That we use anticipation all the time, but we just often do it unconsciously, like breathing. And I envision a future where we are able to use anticipation and use the future a little bit more consciously. So, to keep the metaphor going of breathing, in the way that we use meditation or breathing techniques to enrich ourselves and to calm ourselves, right? We're intentional about our breathing in those situations, and it's no longer unconscious. I imagine a version of Afrofuturism that kind of just spreads throughout the Black community, where we are being very intentional about the way we use the future, in a way that broadens our imagination, broadens our scope and our vision of what the future could be, so that then we can take actions in the present that we might not have seen or even thought to take because of our limited and narrow scope of the future. And so that is like my epic dream of like really building out this Afrofuturist renaissance. I'm only
Hi, and welcome to another edition of King Crush Thursday, the series where we highlight and uplift Black men, because frankly, not too many people are doing it. My name is Val Gay, and I'm super excited about this brother today. Let's see, he is an Afrofuturist, he's an educator, and he's a scholar working on two questions that are shaping much of his work, which is, how can Black people reclaim the power to imagine the future? And once they reclaim that power, what does tomorrow look like? What does the future look like? And those are heady questions. But he says his most important role is to be a husband and a father of his three kids that he shares with his wife, Lakeisha. So please welcome Mr. Timothy T.J. Dean. Hey, TJ, how are you?
Hey, thank you. Thank you. That was an awesome introduction. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you're here. Your presence here actually puts yet another wedge in the very myopic window of how Black men are seen in the world, and especially through the eyes of the media. And we know that the narratives around Black men are many, but yet we see a very few number of stereotypes in the media, mostly negative. And not all of them are incorrect, but they're most certainly incomplete. And so your presence here, together with the other brothers that have been on before you and will come after you, our goal is to have this repository, now well over 200 men, answering the same 6 questions, with the goal of having a young king who may or may not have positive Black male role models to be able to come to this repository, see and hear these same six questions, and hopefully find guidance there. And then for the rest of us who are neither male or even Black, for us to come to this repository, hear these questions, hear the answers to these questions, and hopefully have our minds expanded too. And so I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to get started with the first question, which is, what does manhood mean to you?
Manhood. That is a very interesting question. Something I was just talking with a friend of mine yesterday, excuse me, tomorrow. I'm thinking as a futurist. I was talking about this yesterday with a friend of mine in relation to my son, right, and what it means to raise him up to be a man, and just how broad and expansive that is. I don't know that there is just one answer to that, right? I think for me, it is rooted in responsibility. It's rooted in um, personhood and my humanity. I think being a man, and when I think about manhood, and when I think about how I'm raising my son to be a man, I think it's really about how he stands up in the world, how he shows up authentically, and how he treats other people, right? And the way that he shares and shows kindness, the way that he treats himself with kindness, the way that he holds space for himself and others. I think it's very broad. I think it can look a lot of different ways. I would hate to pigeonhole any one thing as manhood, because I think what's beautiful about it is the vastness, right? I think there, like you said in the intro, right, there's so many visions of brothers, right, across this city and across the country, that I think you can find unique aspects of manhood in each of them. I think in general, though, it's this sense of commitment and a sense of duty that we might have to our communities and to the people in our community. So.
Awesome. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, TJ, who and or what is important to you?
Mm. Well, the who is really easy. As you mentioned, my wife and my children are very important to me. My family and friends, my community, Black people. Black people have been important to me for a long time. Um, I started off. I came to Philadelphia from New York because of Philadelphia Freedom Schools, and had the opportunity to teach in the Freedom Schools and engage in education for liberation through that process, became a teacher. And that's really what inspired and really directs a lot of my work, is trying to understand how I can help to uplift Black people, how I can help to improve our lives, right? Like create the world that I want to live in, and to create the world that I want my children to live in. And starting with Black people as the center and as the focal point for those questions and for those designs. So that is what's really important to me.
That's wonderful. Excellent. Thank you. So, TJ, question three is, how do you want us to see you?
How do I want you to see me? Um, that's a good one. I'm often seen, I think for now in this day and time in 2026, I'm seen as a father first. My exposure to the world is largely through my children right now, because I'm just, they're in their growing stages and I'm so active in their lives. Um, or even through my wife, right? Oh, you're Keisha's husband, right? So, um, but I think I want to be seen as someone who is caring, someone who is deeply serious and committed to the work that I'm doing. I definitely want to be seen as an Afrofuturist. That's really important to me. I love Afrofuturism. I love the idea of decolonizing our future, imagining futures that serve us, and using those visions of the future as like guiding lights to organize us and to mobilize us into action. So I want to be seen as someone who is doing that work, who has contributed something to the legacy of Black people in this country.
Mm, mm. I hear you. I hear you. So, thank you. So, TJ, what is your epic dream?
My epic dream, yes. My epic dream is actually to create like an Afrofuturist renaissance. And so what I mean by that is I envision, like a lot of people have envisioned Afrofuturism really just through the aesthetic, through like sci-fi and technology and, you know, spaceships and Black Panther. Um, I envision it more broadly as part learning from the past, part Sankofa, part learning from the future to create like this powerful version of our community in the present. One of the things that I'm really interested in is futures literacy, and it's this idea of learning how to use the future. It's a skill, it's a capacity like any other kind of literacy. But this one is being able to see and recognize that the way that we anticipate the future is 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 very commonplace, and it's almost like breathing where you do it, you anticipate the future all the time, right? You anticipate the future in terms of when I'm crossing the street, I anticipate whether that car is going to get to me before I make it across the street or not, right? That we use anticipation all the time, but we just often do it unconsciously, like breathing. And I envision a future where we are able to use anticipation and use the future a little bit more consciously. So, and the to keep the metaphor going of breathing in the way that we use meditation or breathing techniques to enrich ourselves and to calm ourselves, right? We're intentional about our breathing in those situations, and it's no longer unconscious. I imagine a version of Afrofuturism that kind of just spreads throughout the Black community, where we are being very intentional about the way we use the future, in a way that broadens our imagination, broadens our scope and our vision of what the future could be, so that then we can take actions in the present that we might not have seen or even thought to take because of our limited and narrow scope of the future. And so that is like my epic dream of like really building out this Afrofuturist renaissance. I'm only using renaissance because I think people understand what a renaissance is. But when I really think about it, I think about it more like, if anybody is familiar with the Congo cosmology and the Dikemba and the circle of life that is depicted in their cosmological symbol. Like I think about it in the version of that, of like this cycle, this broadening of our spiritual selves and our physical selves and the past and the future and the present. Yeah, so that's my, like, in a short version, that's my epic dream.
Wow, wow. Awesome. Excellent. Awesome. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that. And like many of the brothers before you, you have been answering question 5 all along implicitly. But now I get to ask you explicitly, Mr. Timothy T.J. Dean, who are you?
Who am I? I am I'm learning that I get to be who I want to be. And so it's been a question in doing this work, and in really understanding the future and belief around identity formation, and that uh, I know myself as a reader. I love to read. I know myself as someone who loves basketball. I know myself as a New Yorker. I know myself as a father. I know myself as someone who's very invested, someone who loves Black history. and very invested in Black politics, um, and radical Black politics. And I'm learning that there are other ways that I get to know and define myself, right? And that as I grow and as I continue to learn, that who I am continues to evolve. That I don't have to pigeonhole myself into being any one thing and say, well, that's who I am and that's all I am. But that I can continue to learn new skills. I can continue to learn new information and apply them and grow myself. So who I am is really who I am still becoming, which is always in process. It's always in iteration. So it's all of the things that I've named already, plus whatever the future is holding for me and whatever I see for myself.
Understood. Understood. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that. And here we are already at question 6, which is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you or you wanted me to ask you that I didn't? In other words, what did I miss?
One thing that comes to mind that I would love to also just bring up is the work that I do in my day job. So besides being an Afrofuturist, and I actually use some of my futures literacy work in my day job, but I work for the Wealth and Work Futures Lab. And right now, what we're doing is we're exploring grief in the city amongst young adults and really deeply exploring what how they're experiencing grief. And so it's I'll just start, and I think it's easier to frame it in the 3 questions that are kind of foundational to our work, which is like, what is grief, right? And really expanding and expounding on the definition of grief that a lot of people have. How does it impact me? Right. And so really understanding like how is grief impacting us on a physical, emotional, spiritual, psychic level. One thing that comes to mind that I would love to also just bring up
How can I
is
move
the
the work
grief
that I
within
do in
my
my
body.
day
How
job?
can I
So besides being an Afrofuturist
take
and actually
action,
use some
perform
of my futures
rituals,
literacy work
engage in
in my day
practices
job
that are going to
but
allow me
I work
to
for
address grief. And
the
so
Wealth and Work
we've
Futures Lab,
been working
and
with
right
some
now, what we're
awesome
doing
young
is we're
adults. Our
exploring
target age group is like
grief
18 to
in the city
26,
amongst young
because that
adults,
seems to be the most
and really
underserved group
deeply
in the city. Like
exploring
once you're
what
18, you
how
know what I
they're
mean? Like you
experiencing
kind of age
grief,
out of a lot of things.
and
And so I'll just
really
start, and
looking
I think
at
it's easier to frame it in the 3 questions that are
and
kind
it
of
started at
foundational to our
them
work,
looking at
which is
what
like, what is
is
grief,
inhibiting the
right? And really
transition to work
expanding and
for a lot of
expounding
young
on the
people,
definition of
and
grief that a lot
grief
of
is
people
just the
have.
thing that kept coming up.
And so
How
we've
has it impacted
centered
a
me,
lot of our work on
right? And
grief,
so really
and that's just been
understanding like
very
how is
like
grief
powerful and
impacting
transformative for me
us on a
personally because
physical,
it's just
emotional,
moved me along
spiritual,
on my own
psychic
journey of
level. And
understanding
then
grief
what can I
and
do about it, right? How can I
and
move the
working with
grief
the
within my
grief in
body?
my
How can
life
I
and with my family and
take
with loved
action,
ones,
perform
and
rituals,
we have a
engage in
larger goal of
practices
wanting
that are going
to
to
spread
allow
what we're
me
calling
to
what's called grief
address grief? And
literacy
so
around the
we've
city
been working
and
with some
help
awesome young adults. Our
people
target
have a
age group is like
language for
18 to
grief and help grief
26,
to be much
because
less
that seems
taboo
to be the most
across the
underserved
city
group
that
in the city. Like once you're
people don't shut
18, you
down
know what I mean?
when the
Like you kind of
grief
age
comes
out of a
up in
lot of things.
conversation,
And
that people
so
don't shut down
really looking at
when grief is brought
and
into
it
the
started
room,
at
because
them
grief is
looking
always
at
coming in the
what
room
is
with people,
inhibiting the
especially with young
transition to
people,
work
for a lot of young
um,
people,
and
and
it looks a
grief is
lot of
just the
different
thing that kept
ways.
coming up. And
And so we've
we will
centered
talk
a lot
about
of our work
trauma,
on grief,
but we
and that's
will
just been
not talk
very
about
like
grief.
powerful and
And
transformative for me
I
personally,
really
because it's
appreciated the
just
healing
moved
verse
me
and
along
what
on
you
my
did
own
there and what
journey of
y'all did in that
understanding
work around it,
grief.
because
And
this grief work
and
is
working
really
with the
important,
grief
and it's
in my
important for the young
life
people,
and with my family
and
and
like I
loved
said,
ones,
my commitment to Black
and we
people,
have a larger goal
seeing
of
and
wanting to
experiencing
spread
grief
what we're calling
myself,
what's called grief
through the
literacy
myriad of ways,
around the
right, that
city.
people are
And
grieving. Help
a lot of times we focus on
people have a
loss and death
language for
loss,
grief and help grief to
but
be much less
just this
taboo
loss across the
across the
board,
city, that people
right
don't
now
shut
that's happening
down
now
when the grief
ancestrally,
comes up
that
in
we're still
conversation,
impacted
that people
by.
don't shut
And
down
being
when
able to really
grief
help
is
people
brought into the
see and
room,
get
because grief is always coming in
a
the
really
room
broader
with people,
understanding of
especially
that
with young
grief, and
people.
how it has impacted us and
Um,
how it continues to
and it
impact
looks
us,
a lot of
has
different
been really
ways.
important. So I
And
definitely
we
wanted to
will
name
talk about
that,
trauma,
because that's
but
something
we
that
will not talk about grief.
And
I'm proud of the
I
work that
really
we're doing
appreciated the
around
healing
that,
verse
and I really
and what you
think
did there and what y'all did in
that
that
I'm
work
looking forward
around
to
it,
the impact
because
that we'll have in
this
the
grief
city
work is
with
really
that work.
important, and it's important for the young people.
That is really,
And like I
really
said,
wonderful.
my
Thank
commitment
you.
to Black
Thank you so
people,
much for your work.
seeing and
It's
experiencing grief myself,
absolutely needed.
through the myriad of ways, right,
It's
that people are
necessary and
grieving.
needed.
A lot of times we focus on
And
loss and death
I'm
loss,
really
but
grateful for,
just this loss across the board.
the type of work. And,
Right now, that's happening now
prior
ancestrally, that
to
we're
a
still
few days
impacted
ago, I'd
by,
never met you
and
before.
being
Obviously,
able to
someone had
really help people
nominated
see
you.
and get
But
a
the
really
event, you
broader
came up to
understanding
me.
of
I
that
loved it. You
grief
were
and how
like,
it has
"I'm going to see you
impacted
in a
us and
couple
how it
days.
continues to impact us,
We're gonna do an
has
interview."
been
And I was like,
really
"That was
important.
great."
So I
But what
definitely
you just
wanted to
said to
name
me, that
that,
the young
because
man
that's something
who
that
you were there to support, you know, since
I'm
middle
proud
school
of.
when
I'm proud of the
when
work
you
that
were
we're
his
doing
teacher.
around that.
That is such
And
a
I really
powerful
think,
thing, because we
I'm
are
looking forward to the
often
impact that we'll
grieving
have in the city
lost
with that work.
relationships. You have a you develop that a is really, relationship with a really teacher wonderful. or a Thank trusted you. Thank you adult, and so then much for your you work. matriculate out, and even that needed. loss is great, let alone it's necessary and losses of people who are and are I'm really born into grateful our for, families or in other ways, the type as well as of other work. things. And And so I'm so grateful. we Prior for to on behalf a of few days everyone ago, I'd who never you get met to you work with, who before. gets to work Obviously, with me. someone I'm had so grateful that you are doing nominated this you. work, and you're so committed But the event to you the came work up and to to me. all I of loved us, it. You were which is like, great. "I'm going to see you in And a couple days. I We're just gonna honor you, my do an king. I interview." pray That was that great. but what you your just said epic to me, that the young dream man absolutely who comes you were there to
sooner
support, you've
rather
known
than
since middle
later is
school
really,
when you were
again,
his
it's
teacher.
needed and
That is such a
necessary.
powerful
And I'm
thing,
so
because
grateful that you're here.
we
Thank you
are
so
often
much.
Thank you so
grieving
much for having me. I appreciate you
lost
creating a
relationships.
space.
You have
Shout out to you for creating
you
this space
develop a
for
relationship with a
recognizing
teacher
Black
or
men
a
around the
trusted
city.
adult,
And
and then you
I,
matriculate
I'm
out,
very
and
honored to be here.
even that loss
Absolutely.
is
Absolutely.
great.
Thank
Let
you.
alone,
And there's two things. One, I stay right
losses
there
of
because I want to
people
thank
who
the
are,
audience. And two, just so you know,
are
it's not just the city,
born
my
into
brother.
our
This is like brothers
families or in other
all over
ways,
the
as well as
world,
other
which is
things. So I'm
Oh,
so
okay.
amazing.
I'm
grateful
sorry. I don't
So,
want to minimize
for,
your
on
right?
work.
behalf of
See?
everyone who you get to
No,
work
and
with
it's
and who
not a
gets to work with
minimizing
you. I'm
at
so
all.
grateful
Just to let
that
you
you are
know
doing this
that
work and you're so
we
committed
are we are
to the work
myriad,
and to all
right?
of us,
We
Right.
which is
tend
great.
to,
And
as a
I just
society,
honor you, my
reduce
king. I pray
everyone
that
around us to just the people
your
around
epic
us, right?
Mhm.
Or
absolutely
reduce a
group, a whole group of
sooner
people, just
rather
to the
than
people
later
around
is
us. And
really,
that's the
again,
other
it's
reason,
needed
another
and
reason why I want young
necessary.
kings
And I'm
to
just
be
so
able to
grateful
come
that
here,
you're
right?
here. Thank you
To
so much.
hear
Thank you so much for having me. I
Roy
appreciate you
McFarlane,
creating a
for
space.
example, the former
Shout out to you for
poet
creating a
laureate of
space for
Birmingham, England,
recognizing Black men
Mhm.
taught
around the city.
These
And
ideas
yeah,
that
no,
are not
I'm
too
very honored to be
different,
here.
too different from
absolutely,
the ideas
absolutely.
that they
Thank you.
have,
And
right?
there's two
To hear
things.
all
One, I
these
stay
different
right there because
brothers,
I want
whether
to
they
thank the
live here
audience.
in
And two, just so
Philadelphia,
you
where we
know,
happen to
it's not
be
just the city, my
best
brother.
place
This is
on the
like
planet as
brothers
far as I'm concerned.
all over the
But if people happen to
world, which
live in
is
other
Oh,
places,
okay. I'm
great.
sorry. I don't want to
because
minimize your
First of
right.
work.
all, we're
See?
everywhere. And two, we're not a
No, and it's
monolith.
not a
And
minimizing
three,
at
Right.
all. Just
there
to
are
let you
opportunities
know,
for
though,
all
that
of us to learn from
we
each other.
are
And so I'm
we are
so grateful
myriad,
for that.
right?
And
We
Right.
we
stay
tend
there because
to,
I
as a
thank the
society,
audience
joining us,
reduce. I really hope
everyone
that you
around us
listen
to
to this
just the people
conversation
around
because
us,
I have
right?
heard
And if there's a
reduce a
positive and
group, a whole group of
successful
people
Black
listening to
man in
people
your
around
life,
us, and
who you want
that's the
to
other
hear
reason.
from
Another
and
reason
see
why I want young
highlighted in
kings
this forum,
to be able to come
please
here,
click the link
right?
below or
To
my bio.
hear,
Fill out the nomination
Roy
form and we'll take it from
McFarlane,
there.
for example,
Literally,
the
that's
former
actually how we
poet
met,
laureate of
TJ.
Birmingham,
And I'm
England,
so grateful
Mm-hmm.
for that.
these
I often
ideas
say
that are
that,
not too different,
with the
different from the
caveats
ideas
of as
that
long
they
as it's
have,
legal and it's
right?
not hurting
To hear
anybody,
all
I don't
these
really care
different
what the
brothers,
Black man
whether they
does
live here in
for a living,
Philadelphia, where
because that's
we
not
happen to be,
always a good
best place on the
judge
planet as
of
far as
the
I'm
impact that we
concerned.
have in the
But
world
if people
because of
happen to live in
myriad
other
of
places,
reasons,
great,
Mm-hmm.
right?
but
Because first of all, we're
what is
everywhere,
important
and
and what
two,
he
we're not a
can
monolith.
control is the
And
content of
three,
his
Right.
character
there are
and the
opportunities
impact
for
that he
all
is
of us to
making
learn from each
on the
other. And so I'm
community
so
around
grateful for
him.
that. And that's why I
As
stay
with
there because I
TJ, starting with
thank
the
the
nuclear
audience,
family
I
and
really hope that
resonating
you
out
listen
to
to
the
this
rest of us.
conversation because I
Those
have. And
are
if there's
the
a
brothers positive and successful Black man in your life who you want to hear from and see highlighted in this
in the
forum,
meantime, please
click the link below or in my bio, fill out the nomination form, and we'll take it from there. And literally, that's actually how we
have
met.
a great day. Thank you so much.
And I'm so grateful for that.
That was really wonderful.
I often say
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You know, with the caveat of as long as it's legal and it's not hurting anybody, I don't really care what the Black man does for a living. Because that's not always a good judge of the impact that he has in the world because of myriad of reasons. Right? But, you know, what is important and what he can control is the content of his character and the impact that he is making on the community around him. As with TJ, starting with the nuclear family and resonating out to the rest of us. Those are the brothers that we want to make sure that we hear from and are included in this repository. So in the meantime, please stay tuned next week for yet another amazing king. And please remember to spread love and have a great day. Thank you so much. And TJ, thank you so much. That was really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.